This Week in Radio Tech, episode 303, is brought to you by Lavo and the Crystal Clear Virtual Radio Console. Crystal Clear is the console with a multi-touch touchscreen interface. By the new Omnia 7 AM audio processor. Truly, AM never sounded this good. And by Axia and the convenience and flexibility of LiveWire Plus, the most advanced AOIP networking from the people who invented broadcast AOIP. What's an engineer to do when the old transmitter you're getting rid of won't fit through the building door? Well, you could cut it apart with a Sawz-All, or you could break out a wall and make a bigger door. Well, Chris Tarr used both strategies during 2 recent transmitter upgrades. The Ninjaneer joins Chris Tobin and me for a TWiRT reunion episode. Hey, welcome in. It's This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack. So delighted that you're here. We've got a great show for you. Your favorite people are all here. Well, besides me, okay. Besides me, Chris Tobin is coming along shortly. He's on his way back from a run, had to go see Mom, and he's on his way back to his studio. So he'll be joining us a bit later. And look who we found. It's Chris Tarr. Hey, Chris, how are you?
You know, I had this weird dream, okay? You know, we had TWiRT last Thursday, and we wrapped it up. I went to bed, and it was like a year and a half or 2 years, and I worked at this nonprofit radio station, and I had this dream that I left Intercom, and I came back, and then, you know, here we are. So I don't know what happened. It was really weird.
Well, I'm delighted that I know you've had a busy schedule. You've got kids, you've got family, you've got job responsibilities that are pretty enormous, and I can appreciate that. So I'm glad that you were able to find some time today, and I hope that in the future you might be able to come back and visit more often. And one reason I really like you. I mean, look, I like you personally, but I also like the fact that you're out there doing stuff. So you have stories to tell. And hey, remember, I'll tell you what, we'll get to that after we.
You know, here's the thing, Kirk. As you can tell by the, you know, behind me on my wall, these certificates, I'm kind of a big deal. So and that's really the bigger issue here.
Well, we knew you were kind of a big deal. By the way, happy birthday! Didn't you have one recently?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Yeah, last week. Week ago.
Oh, last week. Okay. All right. Well, let me know when you hit 50 and join the 50 Club. That'll be good.
All right, we'll do.
I'll
be the first to know.
Our show This Week in Radio Tech. Here's what we're going to talk about. We'll give it a little tease. Chris Tarr has been doing transmitter-y things, and he posts on Facebook about all the stuff he's doing and how he's excited to get up and meet the day, and he's happy to get in his Miata and go somewhere and wrestle a transmitter. And I just love the way Chris thinks about this stuff, and I wish I would more frequently think of my day that way. I just think it's really helpful, and I think we all can learn a few things. That's one reason why we have this chit-chat. That's one reason why Chris Tobin joins us and gives us usually a very balanced view of using new technology. You know, hey, don't be afraid to jump out there. And then Chris Tarr, when he joins us, he tells us about his exploits, but also about his excitement for the technology and putting it to use and making it work for people. And then sometimes I'm able to, you know, install an IP radio or a new audio over IP system or even a transmitter or something like that from time to time. So that's why we love bringing you these stories and hope that you, our listeners and viewers, that you get to relate to them as well. Our episode number 303 is brought to you in part by the folks at Lavo, L-A-W-O, Lavo. They're known for making big honking audio consoles, and now they make a smaller line of consoles for radio stations. Hey, everywhere you go, you find touchscreens. There's your smartphone, tablet, of course. Supermarket checkouts have touchscreens. Laptops come with them. I just got a laptop that does. And so do radios in the new cars. Even airplane cockpits have them. Touchscreens make sense because they're simple and natural. Their intuitive controls help you finish tasks faster and with fewer errors. Isn't it time you brought the power of touch to your radio studios? Well, you can. With the Crystal Clear Virtual Radio Console from Lavo, Crystal Clear gives talent an instantly understandable multi-touch interface. Faders, meters, clocks, timers, talkback, and more live in harmony on a single screen, so shows run smoother and they sound better. Crystal Clear features Lavo's exclusive Auto Mix. That's the hands-free smart mixing algorithm designed for fast-paced multi-mic talk shows. And also Auto Gain. Just press a button and the preamp calibrates automatically while your guest speaks into the microphone. Now that's convenient. With so much advanced automation, talent can dock those mixing consoles and use the same screen to do other things, like working with delivery systems, audio editors, or phones. Crystal Clear's power plant measures just one rack unit. Pretty amazing considering the staggering amount of DSP on board. There's compression, EQ, voice processing, and precision delay that can all be applied to all of your mics, line, and digital sources. Optional upgrades include redundant power, MADI and Ravenna, and AES 67. And all this power really costs no more than you'd spend for an ordinary console. If you're thinking about a new console, don't decide before you check out the Crystal Clear from Lavo. Go to www.lavo.com and read about it. Or you can call in the USA, call Bill Bennett at Lavo USA. You can give him a call at 888-810-4468. That's 888-810-4468 to find out more. The future is clear. It's Lavo Crystal Clear. Thanks to Lavo for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. By the way, that webpage we were showing you, that's the webpage for the Crystal Clear. If you go there, there's a 6-minute video where Mike Dosh explains a lot of the features of the Lavo console. By the way, a little program note, we will be having Mike Dosh on the show in a few weeks, in June sometime. And he'll be talking about more ideas about virtual radio. He's probably going to tell us a lot of what I heard from him at the Public Radio Engineering Conference at the NAB show. So that'll be interesting as well. All right, let's jump right back in. Episode 303. Chris Tarr is here. And Chris, you and I are both Facebookers. You know, Facebook is the third largest third largest country on the planet. So you get a lot of followers. You have a lot of people interested in what you do. And you've been through quite a few upgrades and projects from here and there. Where would you like to start?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, boy, I've done several AXI installations, a couple of transmitters. One of the things I like about Facebook is, especially, over the years, I've actually gotten a lot of followers and friends who watch TWiRT, who found me on Facebook. And, a lot of them are kind of interested in finding out a little bit more about how the sausage is made, how this stuff happens. So I really do enjoy, taking pictures and documenting all of the steps and all the things that I'm going through, challenges and otherwise, when I take on these projects, because I really do enjoy them. I mean, there's something about taking a project from start to finish, especially something this large and this impactful, and just seeing it all the way through. And you talked about how, I look, post about getting on with the day and that sort of thing. And I really do every day wake up and just think it's so cool that I get to do this stuff. We can, I guess, we'll start with the latest project, the transmitter in Baraboo. This is for WOLX. And I did a tour of the site on the show years ago. It's a cool building on the top of a bluff in Baraboo, Wisconsin. And the main transmitter is an 816 R2B made by Continental. It's about 25, 30 years old.
What size is that one? Is that transmitter? 816R?
That's a 22 kilowatts.
Oh, that's one of those big ones. 3 big cabinets plus an external power supply?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big one. So that was the main transmitter. The backup transmitter was the old one of 3 left in the country, AEL FM20 KB, and it had actually
goodness,
many years ago. It was just sitting there, and we had a little 1 kilowatt Nautel as a backup transmitter.
Yeah.
So, as time went on, we decided it was time to do an upgrade and retire the Continental into backup service, and at the same time, just because the technology is now there, we decided at the same time to turn on IBOC at that site and do HD radio. So it was kind of a huge undertaking because the AEL is not a small transmitter, and it was put in 1969, and over time things had gotten built around the transmitter and in the space of the building. So we actually ended up taking a Sawz-All and literally cutting the transmitter apart to get it out of the way so we could put the new transmitter in.
Now, that AEL, I've only seen one AEL in my life, and it was all contained in a single cabinet, but I don't know the power level. Was this in one cabinet?
This was 2 cabinets together.
Okay.
So it was a little bit. It was smaller than the Continental, bigger than the Nautel that replaced it.
Yeah.
So this interesting story about this transmitter. Many years ago, I would say probably 6-7 years ago, the Continental 816 had a major failure and was off the air for several days, and we had to rebuild pretty much most of the internals on this transmitter had to get rebuilt. In the process, we had the AEL transmitter on, and it died about 2 days in. So
okay, so what do you do now?
Yeah, so I contacted a friend of mine who had worked on this particular transmitter for years and years and years. And he came out, we started working on it, and we got about an hour in, and we just kept finding more and more things. You know, we replaced one thing, and it would sort of work, and we find one other thing. And he finally looked at me and he said, you know, Chris, you and I could probably get this thing running again, but do you really want to?
Yeah. Well, I've been faced with that.
And I said, no, I really don't. I really would just like to retire it. So, it ends up where, long story short, I was able to borrow a 600-watt amplifier from a friend of mine. This transmitter site's 1,500 feet in the air. It covered the city of License just fine. And then we later on, got a little portable 1 kilowatt Nautel as a semi-permanent backup. So at any rate, so it had sat there for years, just kind of not used at all. So, and I wrote about this in a Radio Guide article not too long ago about how I look at these projects as not only an opportunity to put a new transmitter in, but also an opportunity to really improve the site while I'm doing it.
Okay.
I typically, redo all of the remote control wiring, redo most of the HVAC, redo, label outlets, label networking, really go through. And as I like to say, if 10 years from now, the guy who replaces me isn't swearing at me under his breath at 2 o'clock in the morning, I've done my job. So, that includes site documentation, all that stuff. So, we took Sawz-All, got the old transmitter out, cleaned out the space, got all the old, miles of wiring removed. And actually I had documented, we had 2 separate racks with various equipment. Most of it was dead. Took out all the dead equipment, combined it all in one rack, put in a new network switch, the whole 9 yards. Got the Nautel GV20, which is HD and analog. We're doing 16.5 kilowatts analog and 165 watts digital.
Okay.
And we got that installed. Now, an interesting story about this. The guy who, my assistant in Madison, you know him well, Matt Rockwell,
yes,
helped me out with this project. And we were looking at how to get this transmitter into the building because it's kind of a tight space. The truck would show up, it's a lift truck, and they drop it and you have to uncrate it and get it in. So, I talked to him and said, well, let's call around to some heavy machinery movers, see if we can get somebody to come up and do that. He said, I've got the solution. And I said, okay, what are you thinking? Well, he's a member of the Stagehands Union. And he said, you know what? We're all insured. We're bonded. He said, we move large things into tight places all the time as part of what we do as stagehands.
Oh, sure. Sure.
We'll take care of it. And I'll tell you, they did a fantastic job. They had that thing in there in 45 minutes and not a scratch on it. So they got it unpacked and moved it in. And, all new wiring for the AC, all new HVAC. We put in the importer and exporter and the HD, and I programmed all that up. And it was about a 2-week process from the time the transmitter was delivered till we got it powered up. Had to put in a new coax switch and some other things. And I'll tell you, there's nothing better when you press that RF on button and things come to life. So, it was great. And then, obviously after that, there's more to it because, nowadays it's not just putting a transmitter in. With HD, there's artist experience. There's, which is on HD radios doing the album art on the HD display radios. There's Next Radio for, the apps, and there's, all of these different things. There's getting pad information up there. Actually, now it's PSD is what they call it. On HD radio for title and artist. So there's a whole bunch of networking that needs to be done. There's middleware back at the studio side to take the XML output of the playback system and format it for all of that. There's a middleware for getting the album art up to the transmitter. So, all in all, it's really fun because there's so many disciplines involved. There's, obviously, the physical moving transmitters around, but then there's doing the RF plumbing, doing the typical transmitter type of work. Then there's the new stuff with the IBOC equipment, the ubiquity gear, configuring that, installing that, testing that. And then there's metadata and data and all these other things with networking that's now involved, both on the studio side and the transmitter side. So that's really what makes it so fun is it's a little everything. So, I was able to get all of these different things involved, and then, brought the label maker up, labeled everything. I, cleaned up all the documentation. I bought little plastic filing cabinets for everything, and really took the time to kind of rejuvenate the site and clean it up and make it look really good, because that's the best time to do it. A lot of the time you're off the air anyway because you're having to move things around. And so, you're not afraid to cut out some wiring that may or may not be useful. And, just really redo it all and document it and do it well. So that was kind of the big project I did. But I did a second one, analog transmitter.
And we can cover the second one in a big way. Maybe after our next break, though, I'd like to hear some details on what you chose to use for technologies to get your HD audio to the transmitter side and to get the PSD information to the transmitter side, and what kind of remote control. And we can certainly mention brand names, or if you just want to mention technology, that's fine too. But I'd like to hear some details on what you chose and what tends to work for you, based on the budget or whatever the constraint may be. But if you go ahead and give us an overview of the second project too, and then after the break, we'll come back and hit everybody up with some details.
Sure. Well, that all kind of ties together actually, because it's part of a bigger project that I'm working on. So I had a second site, smaller one. This was only a 6 kilowatt Class A AM. Same thing, Nautel transmitter, 7.5 kilowatt. Didn't do HD on that one. But the same steps. There was an old transmitter that we had to remove. We actually ended up, because the transmitter building is so small, and the main transmitter was at the front of the building by the door, and the backup transmitter was in the back of the building, and I couldn't remove it through the front door without removing the main transmitter. So I ended up having a door cut in the back, and cut it out, took the old transmitter out the back, put the new one in, built the door, and built up around it. But there are some things, and we'll take the break and come back, and I can tell you kind of the bigger scope of what we're working on, because it all kind of ties together in my master plan of things that I'm working on with our sites here.
By the way, these two sites are the same owner or two different owners?
Same owner. This is all intercom stuff. I have done some other things with some of the other groups that I work for. I've done some Axia installs that we can talk about a little bit. For some other groups, but this is all just intercom projects that I'm working on in Madison and Milwaukee.
So I'm curious when you these are even the one in Baraboo, that's an intercom project.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So when you undertake a project like this, are you making a lot of these decisions yourself? Are you working with a regional director of engineering or are you the regional? Who are you working with to make sure that Chris is on track and these are all good ideas?
Well, obviously I run the, there are people who sign off on what I decide. But intercom is great in that I have a lot of freedom to make those decisions myself. They won't let me make unwise ones, but there are some companies where, they determine you're going to buy this kind of transmitter and you're going to hook it up this way and you're going to use this gear. Intercom is very much outside of a few things that we've standardized on. They pretty much let the guys choose what they want to choose. And there's a lot of reasons for that too. A lot of reasons that make sense. Again, as you know, I'm Axia. I speak Axia very well, and I speak Nautel very well. So, not all of our markets use Nautel, not all of our markets use Axia. But in all of my projects, they have no problem doing that because, that's what works best for me, and I'm the one who's got to live with it. So, I've got a lot of freedom that way.
Hey, thinking about these projects also on a big scale until we break, did you have to do any antenna changes? I know you did some RF plumbing in the transmitter room, but what about on the tower?
No, I looked at one and there might be something in the future that I might do with that. There was another picture I posted from that Baraboo site a few months ago, a little more than that now, where I actually had to replace one of the arms on one of the antenna bays. It got hit by lightning and a hole about that big in it. I actually had to have the arm taken down on one of the bays and have a new one replaced. But nothing at that level yet. So fortunately, that becomes even crazier. But there is, it's been a long time since we've talked. I did have to do an antenna change on a translator here that I installed about 2 years ago. I had to change from a non-directional to a directional antenna. So there's been a little mixed bag of everything. that I've been working on.
Wow. Wow. So, and some of that at my stations in Mississippi, we have Mike Patton, who, he's been a guest on our show.
Sure.
Mike tends to handle our RF stuff because he's great at it. He does grounding right. He does so many things right. And it would take up a lot of my time. And I've got a full-time job with the folks at Telos. So we get Mike to do that. I go down and tend to take care of the automations in the studios and the Axia stuff. So that works out pretty well. But it's interesting to see how people juggle these responsibilities, and sometimes we have to do things that are a little over our head. And one thing, let me ask you this before we go to break. Chris, how have you worked through in your career? How have you worked through being honest with yourself and saying, I don't know how to do this, but I can figure out the parts that I don't know, and I can go learn them or go ask the right people? Because that has always been a real blessing for me in my career. I've always been able to identify that which I don't know and either have somebody tell me or have somebody else do it or figure it out for myself. So I'm not casting about, usually, I'm not casting about doing things that I really have no business doing because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm able to identify those things. Have you found the same experience in identifying what you don't know how to do yet?
Yeah. Yeah, and I, actually, I've also fixed a lot of things that other people have thought they knew what they were doing for.
Okay.
It's funny you mentioned that, because one of the phrases I always like to use is, I've got to consult my Rolodex of people smarter than me, and one of the best things that we can do as technical guys is know what we don't know, and to be able to say, that's a little bit above my pay grade. And I've always felt that as engineers, our job isn't to know everything. Our job is to know how to get the answers. And that could be something that we know, and it could be finding out what we don't know, talking to somebody who does know the answer. And, as we've talked before, I'm mostly self-taught in a lot of this stuff, over the years. And I was just very fortunate that I have a lot of very good friends who are very good at what they do. And, as time has gone on, I've made those phone calls less and less and less, but I still have those people available to me. And I don't have at all a problem going, hey, you know what? I am over my head on this. And, there have been, a great example is that AEL problem. When that died, I called, the really experienced engineer who's worked on this thing for years and said, hey, I don't know what to do. This transmitter is just completely foreign to me. And, you could probably solve the problem in half the time that it would take me to figure it out. So I agree. I guess long story short, I totally agree with you. It's really important to be able to admit that you don't know everything and be okay with that. And, I found that management appreciates that more than you trying to kind of bluff your way through it. And, kind of going, oh, yeah, sure, absolutely, I know what I'm doing. And then they find out, or they call somebody else and get a second opinion and go, yeah, that guy's an idiot. I'd much rather go, hey, you know what? I don't know, but I'll tell you, I'll get the answer for you.
I also found this very helpful when you deal with tech support at any company, that if you can identify the symptom really accurately, if you just call them and say, hey, this thing doesn't work, well, that's not much help. You're going to be on the phone a long time. But if you can say, here's what I've noticed. It works except when this happens. Or normally we use it like X, and it's not working like that anymore. Now, if we do this, then I get this result, and it works okay. But in this mode or this way we use it, it doesn't work. And that's, I'm getting this voltage, but not that voltage. If you can really identify all the parameters you can find and explain that's often quite helpful. And of course, telling what you've done and do you have the latest software in it and all, if it has software, that kind of thing. Sure learned that. Who actually taught me that? Probably was talking to support guys at ITC 3M and at Harris with about transmitters and probably some folks at Mosley over the years about troubleshooting STL transmitters.
It's funny that I learned a real kind of an eye-opening lesson about troubleshooting by gentleman. I don't know if you've ever met Dave Dybus out of Chicago. He's now he works as a management for a tower company, but for a long time was a contract engineer in Chicago. And when I first got into this business, I called on him a lot to help me out on transmitter projects, because I started out knowing a little bit more than the average bear, but not much. And he was the one who taught me how to work the problem. It's like, okay, you know what it's supposed to do, and you can see what it's doing up until the point it's no longer doing what it's supposed to do. And if you work backwards, you can start, you can figure out where it is that the problem exists. And you may not know where to fix it, but you can call technical support with that information and say, okay, I'm getting this far. The control ladder's coming on and it's getting through these steps and then it stops. He said, what'll happen is you may need to call support, but in the process of going through just those steps, a lot of times you'll find the problem and, you can fix it yourself. And, I never really thought of it in I'm more of a, scattershot thing. And he was very linear in that. He's like, well, you realize for the time you press this button, these steps have to happen before the transmitter comes on. So you just figure out which, how far along that's getting before it stops doing what it's supposed to do. And there's your problem. And all of a sudden it just became clear. And I'm like, oh, that's actually very easy. Yeah, of course. And, it makes troubleshooting so much easier when you think of it that way.
Years ago, I think I was troubleshooting a transmitter, and I want to say it may have been a CCA or a CSI FM transmitter, and it didn't use a pressure sensor to see if there was airflow, which I'm glad it didn't. Flow is flow, pressure something else. So with a tube, you want flow. And so the transmitter wouldn't come on because the airflow interlock said there's no blower going on. And I knew there was blower going on. I could hear it and feel it. And so I talked to support, and they I don't remember if I troubleshot this myself or support did, but in the end, in my head, I heard somebody saying, that transmitter is ducted outside, right? The air goes outside, right? I said, yeah. I said, well, go look outside on the ground and see if you see a little metal piece that looks like an air vane. Okay. So I went outside, looked around. Well, there it is, right there on the ground. This is the thing that's supposed to catch. There's your problem right there. This is supposed to catch the air and move the switch up and let it know that the air is okay. So the air really was okay. So, yeah, for a few days, I had to put an alligator clip across that. Yeah, we lived dangerously for a few days.
Been there, done that. I've been there, done that. So, well, if you want to take your break when you come back,
yeah.
I know I've got a little bit of time here before I to go, but I can kind of give you the bigger picture on these projects. It's actually kind of neat, kind of what my end goal is with all of this stuff.
Good. And to the extent you can, I'd love to hear about, what are the ingredients that you used to bake these cakes.
Totally.
All right. Yep. Episode 303 of This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack along with Chris Tarr. We hope that Chris Tobin will be able to join us. Oh, he's online now. Good. So he should be with us in just a few minutes. Hey, our show is brought to you in part by the Omnia 7. And did you know there's a brand new Omnia 7? We've talked about the Omnia 7 FM for almost a year now. We've played some interesting videos and fun videos and talked about how easy it is to set up even remotely. Well, we got a brand new Omnia 7. I'm going to try to get it. I'm limited by cord length here, but and my mic is in the way. But there we go. That is the new Omnia. Let me get back in the shot here. That's the new Omnia 7 AM. I'm actually feeding it with an AES audio feed. That's what's making the meters move. This is fresh out of the box. I haven't set anything up except make the display full screen. I had to enter the basic password to get into it. And I just plugged AES in and bam, it started working. So on the back, there are no BNC connectors for multiplex. There's 2 analog in, XLR. There's 2 analog out, XLR. And there's AES in and AES out on XLR. There is a BNC for AES reference if you want to give it an AES reference that way. So the Omnia 7 AM, why would a company focus on and make a brand new AM audio processor? And that question was asked, believe me, at NAB. Why are we doing this? Why are we making a new AM audio processor? Well, the reason is because we felt we could do a really good job of it. And so that's what Leif Clayson and Jim Koosman and other audio processing professionals and gurus at Telos have done. In fact, let me run over a couple of the cool features here. The AM version of the Omnia 7 offers the same psychoacoustic distortion masking performance as the FM version, but for AM. Now, what does all that mean? Psychoacoustic distortion masking performance. That means that we can do a lot of loudness clipping in this processor, and you can't hear it. And that's some of Leif Claeson's secret sauce. That's how he gets the Omnia 9 and the Omnia 7 to sound so good and yet be very loud on the air and get maximum modulation because of this distortion masking performance that has psychoacoustic logic and performance in it. So it's possible to be cleaner and louder on AM just like on FM. It's especially important for AM because unlike FM, increased loudness and density does translate into a stronger and more listenable signal on AM, especially in the fringes. Or put another way, loudness does affect coverage and reach on AM. Now, as engineers, we've heard the occasional disc jockey that thinks that this helps on FM too, and it kind of doesn't. It may mask a little multipath, but on AM it does help. Now, since the Omnia 7 AM's clipper can be pushed much harder without causing audible distortion, stations can actually increase their density and loudness cleanly, not mushing it up, but cleanly, and therefore their potential coverage without the distortion associated with traditional clippers. The Omnia 7 doesn't change its crossovers or the width of its bands based upon the output bandwidth, by the way. They remain constant, and that's by choice, not by compromise. The Omnia 7's crossovers are very well designed for sonic purity and just the right places to do this, so it always sounds very musical and smooth. Crossovers did not need to be reinvented for AM. Just a few advantages of the Omnia 7. You can browse into it. You can also use the NF Remote software to get into it, and shows you a fantastic display of the meters. And you get a little idea of that from the front panel on the Omnia 7. But I got to backwards. There we go. But I got to tell you, looking at this with the remote software is just amazing. You can also listen to the output of the Omnia 7 AM through the NF Remote software. So even if you're remote, you can listen at really high quality if you have a good high bandwidth connection out to where the transmitter site is. Of course, it does super positive modulation, 140, 150%, something like that. So if you want to push the transmitter and you have the transmitter to do it, you can do a lot of positive modulation with it. Check it out. It's on the website. Go to telosalliance.com and look for Omnia, and then look for the Omnia 7 AM. It'll breathe new life into your fire-breathing AM radio station and make it sound a lot better, too. You know, the declipper and the undo technology, that's all in there as well. So if you feed it something that's a little clipped and distorted, well, the Omnia 7 can take care of that and turn it back into smooth audio. Thanks to Omnia for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I heard Chris Tobin join us here. Chris, you there? Well, let's see. Ah, there he is. At least the top of his head is there. Hey, Chris, can you tilt down a little bit? I don't know if Chris can hear us. Maybe he can't. All right. Well, Chris Tarr is still with us. Chris Tarr, why don't you and I jump in and keep talking about some details and your overall big plans you were talking about, and we'll see if Chris Tobin can just jump in anytime with a question just to let us know that he's here. So, Mr. Tarr, what do you want to cover next?
Well, we're just getting into kind of the devices and the brands that we're using.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
That kind of thing. So all of the sites that I'm working on now, I'm putting in Burke Arc Touch remote controls. I've also now in the process of the past 6 months have put in IP cameras at all the sites inside of the building, focused on the equipment.
Now, you said the Burke remote controls, and I'm guessing you like the Burks because of some fantastic flexibility in what you can read and display from the sites.
Right, and not only that, but they're you can read any of the sites from any of the other sites. Plus, it's all web enabled. And kind of where we're going with this is, you were joking about how you have a full-time job and all this stuff going on. I oversee all of these stations, and have been doing more and more little side projects for intercom and things. I can't be everywhere at once. So the goal is to not only improve the reliability of the sites with these new transmitters, but also to improve the networking and improve the gear to the point where I can be anywhere and have full control of what's going on at all of my sites. I now have a Microsoft Surface Pro that I bring with me, and I can carry around with me, and that has all of the remote control software and things that I need on it. But at any given time, at any given time right now, currently, I can see what's going on at any site. I can pull it up on my phone even, and just kind of visually inspect what's going on. And with 3 of the sites now, I can see the transmitter. I can remote controls, pretty much everything about the building. I know what the temperature is, all of these different things. And the end result is that all of these sites, at least in what's considered my region, which is Milwaukee and Madison, will all be interconnected. And, we'll eventually get to even that final step where they'll all be part of a VPN tunnel with our office network. So that, you can really sit in one place and literally control everything. And, without ever having to go to a site unless things have gotten, really sideways. But we've got, generators at all the sites now. We've got solid backups at all the sites. Everything's remote controllable. So, really when I go to a site, it's for maintenance to check up on what's going on, or things have gotten so sideways that I have no choice. So, that's kind of the bigger project here is, things like, the Burke remote controls, the non-tel transmitters with the AUIs on them. I have IP connectivity at all the sites. And some sites I'm working on dual IP connectivity, two different.
How are you typically handling the IP connectivity at any given transmitter site?
It's usually what's best available. It started out as DSL or cable or whatever I could get. At those sites. But I'm now moving towards IP radio links, Ubiquity, things like that. Just as a second type of thing. I've got one site with a T1, full-time T1 plus a DSL backup. My end game here is to try to get redundancy at all the sites. I've got 1, 2, 3 of the sites now that have two different options for connectivity. I've got, I'm working on the others. So again, I mean, the end result is really, I want to get it running well enough where, my life isn't putting out fires. I'm just more paying attention to, what's going on and monitoring and kind of being in the inner circle of, hey, there might be a problem here. There might be something that's going on.
So here's a goofy question. If you have a choice of providing IP connectivity at a transmitter site via paying a carrier to do it, like DSL or cable modem, or providing it yourself with an IP radio from maybe a studio site that's got high bandwidth there, which would you do? And if you had to choose one or the other, and I guess you really want to do both.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a preference. Obviously it's nice when you can do the IP radios because you kind of control that, but there can be a reliability issue there with interference and things like that. So I'm a big believer in redundant links. And, one of the nice things about, the links with the ARC system, the Burke ARC systems, is they all talk to each other as well as outbound, especially if you can have, if you can at least have one solid connection somewhere, even if that device can't get out to the public internet, if we can get it through VPN or something else, it can talk to another box that can do the dial out for me. So, they all kind of interconnect like that. And, what's great about the Burke system, and David Comp does these too, is you can set just, instead of critical alerts, you can set warning alerts. So I can say, off the air is a critical alert, but I'd like to know if some things are kind of drifting in and out of tolerance over time, and just kind of a heads up, hey, this is something you might want to think about. For example, if things run warm for a little while, or perhaps reading is drifting, or something like that, where it's intolerance but it's just not where I think it should be, I can get a heads up email. It just says, hey, you might want to take a look at this, and it kind of all revolves around working smarter and not harder. I want to be able to, it's all situational awareness. And a lot of these projects, like we were just saying with Axia, all of that revolves around that. I can control Axia from wherever I am. I can be, I was, a year ago in Indianapolis working on a project for our stations there, and I was able to sit in my hotel room and, make route changes in Axia and look at my transmitters and, things that, 6 years ago, I would have had to get in the car to do. I can now do through IP from wherever I'm at. And that's really the end result.
I was we were having trouble setting a modulation level on this Omnia 7 FM that we just put in one of our stations, and the problem was that we didn't have a great way to monitor it where somebody was at the time. So I was having to go through talking and texting. Is it too high now? Is it about in the ballpark now? And I'm getting my oil changed at Valvoline Instant Oil Change. I'm sitting in my wife's Jeep getting her oil changed while I'm on my phone with TeamViewer, sliding up and down the MPX level on an Omnia 7. Yeah, absolutely. You can do this from anywhere.
Right, and that's the thing is, that's what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to, unless there's something on fire and it's just things are awful, I shouldn't need to be at a transmitter site other than to make sure everything's okay as a routine maintenance visit. Even same thing with a lot of the stuff that's going on here with consoles and audio routing. And, I should be able to 98% of the time not have to be in a fire drill. I can just wherever I'm at go, let me check it out really quick. And that's, at the end of the day, that is the goal in a lot of these improvements is to not only provide better and better and better and better uptime and better, easier usability for the talent, but also to, make our lives a little bit easier because we're doing, more and more and more with less. And, I can't be dealing with 30-year-old transmitters having, components blow out of them at 2 o'clock in the morning and not having a backup or whatever. So, that's part of this bigger project and why I've been doing so many of these transmitter installs and these, transmitter site cleanouts and these Axia rebuilds and things like that. And I'll tell you with Axia, it's been a lot of fun because I've done so many of them now. I think I told somebody the other day I've put in, it's got to be at least 20 Axia surfaces and literally hundreds of nodes. And, it's gotten to the point where, I can do it in my sleep, but and sometimes I do, but it's gotten to the point where, I think in terms of that, when I go to talk to other stations, I say, I was working with this small religious station, and they're looking at replacing their console. There's no reason not to do this anymore, and especially when you're, especially when you're that size, you almost have to do it. Because you don't have the staff that can sit there all day and work on these consoles and things like that. Whereas at least with an IP-based console, you could call me if you needed to. And from Milwaukee, I can log in and make any changes you need and, troubleshoot things without actually having to be there. And you're having to pay me an hourly rate to go sit there. So that goes the same for transmitters. Nautel has that fantastic phone home system, where if you sign up for it, if anything fails, it notifies them and they call you. So if you have a power supply that's going bad, you'll get a call from them going, hey, your transmitter has a power supply going bad. It's under warranty, so we've shipped you one. That's the way things have gotten, and it almost needs to be. So again, that's part of the push for why I'm doing all of these projects is it's gotten to the point where you kind of have to. But again, I'm not going to lie, it's also a lot of fun. So I would never turn it down. I'd never say, let's just leave it alone. It's fine the way it is. I would say, absolutely, let's do something different. I want to play.
Hey, Chris Tobin has joined us now. Chris Tobin, welcome in. You there, buddy?
I'm here. I hope you can hear me okay.
Oh, yeah, we hear you great. You sound just fine. So, Chris, Tarr, how soon were you going to have to go? Are you about close to bug out time?
I'm about at bug out time, yeah.
Okay. Hey, I wanted to show you something real quick that I ran across. I've got to replace an old, it's gotten old now. Boy, I'm getting old. An old Cisco 8-port switch on an Axia system at my station in Cleveland, Mississippi. And this was an original demonstrator system from Axia. So it's 10 years old, and the switch is 10 years old, and it's got a goofy problem, and we're just going to replace it. And I found this replacement fully approved by the folks at Axia. It's a Cisco switch, and what is this model? I don't even know now. Maybe you recognize it. This whole white series. It's a 2960C Charlie. So it's 8 gig ports and 2 more two more ports that have SFP or non-SFP. Oh, I'm sorry. These might be 100. Yeah, these are 100 megabit. That's why this was so cheap. This was under $300, and it'll handle a whole control room for us. So stuff's getting cheap.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thanks for coming along. I sure appreciate you being here and regaling us with some stories. I sure expect to hear more later. I hope you can join us again.
You got it.
All right, good deal. Chris Tarr, everybody. Glad you're here. Glad we found you. Back from Baraboo. He made it back safely. Baraboo. That sounds like a pet name that Chris and his wife would have for, some little dive restaurant they go to.
Hey, watch, come over here and check out this here Baraboo.
Yeah, okay. There you go. Honey, let's go down to Baraboo tonight. Have a good time. Do a little dancing and drinking. All right, dude. You take care. Have a good day. We'll watch you on Facebook. All right, Chris Tobin is along here. Hey, Chris, welcome in. My goodness, you're not. Where are you? Can you tell?
It's been a crazy week and a half of projects. I'll fill everybody in next show. But I'm at Central Park.
I thought you maybe were at a rest stop side of the road. You in northern, in New Jersey or something.
No. It's in New York City. There is a walkway in front of me and pedestrians walking by, and there was a lot of folks on the lawn and just reading and enjoying the fun afternoon here in the city.
Central Park, that's an amazing place. I love Central Park. My wife, my family, we love when we go to New York City. We have to go to Central Park. I got to believe that if it weren't for Central Park and the really intelligent planning of New York City, that honestly you'd probably have a lot more suicides in New York City. That place you can go, just let your mind, let the cares go away and just relax in Central Park.
Well, that is the reason it was created. Central Park is completely man-made. Even the placement of the rocks, the trees, everything you see here is man-made for that exact reason, so that people in the city could get a place to get away. So they didn't go stir crazy, and that's exactly the story behind Central Park. So you hit it right on the head. Oh. So you're exercising the designer's thoughts, everybody's desire to do this. So I'm at Central Park near Columbus Circle, and it's good. It's good stuff. I just taking care of some family things, so I quickly grabbed the laptop, headset mic. I'm using the camera in the laptop, so my video is a little different than usual. So I just tried. I'm using my Verizon wireless card, so I'm accessing some local DAS antenna somewhere.
In fact, that headset actually sounds really good. I think is that a Logitech? Well, I think we've used some
Logitech I bought 5 years ago, and it continues to work to this day.
Yeah, it sounds good. So, hey, while you're in Central Park, maybe you can let us in on a little details. I'm curious as to how much RF there is in Central Park. Are there antennas hiding in tree stumps?
I haven't noticed any. But walking around, there was plenty of antennas, believe it or not, along the perimeter, on the streets that surround the park.
Well, there's high rises. There's high rises almost all the way around the park, and so all the antenna that you need is on those high rise roofs, right?
Yes. But see, this is my Radman. This is for it's an RF sensor. It's for working on rooftops near it's a RF detector.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So it's not going off, so I'm in a good spot. I'm not in a bad RF environment.
Not being a New Yorker myself, but visiting New York from time to time, and I've had many more hours of viewing New York City through CSI and Castle and Law and Order, right? So I think that if you go through Central Park, you're probably going to find a body. It's not like that.
No. It's not. The movies are what they are. It's a movie. It's fantasy. It's an escape. It's an opportunity to do things you shouldn't do in reality. How's that?
Well, for the rest of America, the non-New York part of America, we watch TV, and on almost every week, somebody's finding a body in Central Park.
Well, that's true. If you're watching Castle or NCIS New York back in the day, or Person of Interest, there's another one that has a lot of New York cows. Yes, the script calls for a body in the park. That's what you get. But in life, as we know, in reality, my script doesn't call for a body in the park or on the subway. Though there's an occasional argument, screaming match, but other than that, there's no bodies that I can find.
So, well, talk to us about any projects. We talked to Chris Tarr about projects. He's been, doing transmitters, a big job in Baraboo, Wisconsin, and then another smaller job, and told us about his biggest trouble, I think, more than installing a new transmitter, was getting rid of the old transmitter, because the room, the population in the room had grown up such that you couldn't get the big old honking iron transmitter out of the building anymore. And in one case, they had to knock a hole in the back wall and end up putting a door back there. They took the old transmitter out that way, and they brought the new transmitter in through that door. And in another case, they had to take a Sawz-All to the old AEL transmitter, the FM AEL, and chop it up into pieces to get it out the door.
This is true. I have worked on projects over the years where we had to remove transmitters by dismantling them, and in some cases, widening the doors to get out of the transmitter building. Absolutely. It's the sign of the times. So, yeah, that's just part of it.
So actually, there is a question on my mind that maybe you can. You seem like the kind of organized engineer that could help me with this. When my station's in Mississippi, you start building up systems that become more and more complex, right? So the stations that I have, we now have 5 stations under one roof, 5 studios, and we have an automation system, Rivendell, that allows us to make button panels to switch STL feeds, between the automation directly and a given control room, or even to put a backup automation on the air if we have to take the main automation down for an upgrade. So we have, some button panels that go squirt a routing command to a node somewhere. But then we add streaming. We add, internet streaming to this, and that's done on another computer. Happens to be running an Axia IP audio driver, which to the GPS, to the live wire routing protocol, it looks just like a node. And so you can squirt commands to an IP audio driver. So now when you switch between, let's say you go in a control room, you're going to do a morning show. And so you push a button that takes that morning show feed from the automation directly to the transmitter and feeds it and switches it so the control room is on the air. So first, of course, you fade up the automation on your console, and then you perform the switch, and it's seamless. And now when you talk in the mic in the control room, you're on, some radio station that you've selected. But we also at the same time have to remember that same macro needs to also go touch the streaming computer so that it changes as well. So that it's no longer subscribed to the automation directly, but now it's subscribed to the control room as well. And at the end of the shift, when we push another button, we got to switch not one thing back, but 2 things back at the same time. Now, this may be old hat for a New York City engineer, but this is becoming a lot of complication for a small town radio station. Now, we do this. We can do this on 5 radio stations. We have to remember, not only do we have to write a macro to switch the node that feeds the STL system and the processors, but also we have to add to the macro to switch the internet streaming feed. And then, lo and behold, we have a situation one of the automation computers dies. And so we put the auxiliary automation on the air. And now we have to add that to a button to switch the streaming computer also, lest we forget that. And the streaming computer is, is not switching like it should. And then to add to that, we start adding metadata. Right now, we're doing it pretty simply. We don't have any middleware, but we have metadata going to places, and that just seems like it's getting complex. It just seems like complexity is increasing and increasing. We've added studio cameras and a weather system outside, and so we have websites that give you a picture of the studio and show you the weather. The disc jockeys, they can hit one button, bring up a page in front of them, and they can be verbally delivering the exact same weather forecast and seeing it as the weather guy who does the weather forecast. There's no difference in what the high temp is going to be today, or when the rain is going to start, or what the low temp is. But all this adds complexity, and man, it gets tough. And I was wondering if you had some thoughts on managing system complexity when you're running a bunch of stations under one roof and you've just got a lot of stuff going on. Do you have any generalized advice or specific advice about that?
Well, I usually take out my notepad and start writing notes and sketching ideas in the old-fashioned way. Part of the things to consider in that kind of environment you talk of is maybe using the approach of like the vMix buses and saying, hey, the output of this vMix will always feed the following destinations, and the input to that vMix will vary depending on what salvo or what macro gets driven to the input. So that, in some sense, gives you a dedicated line to those destinations. Think of it like a network distribution. And then you could look at that way. Or maybe consider buses, maybe creating a bus with a node or a series of nodes and say, okay, this particular bus, again, see, we go back to vMix, this bus will always be programmed to air, to outside the building. So we'll call it streaming on air, and then maybe other ancillary places. So that bus can go to a node and come out of the node with several different places as a start.
Now, that's an interesting concept. I actually do, and for those who don't know, haven't installed Axia stuff, and I'm sure the other AOIP manufacturers have some similar things, but in some Axia gear, you have some kind of hidden mixers, and you can change what's coming into them, you can change their level, and you can change if any given input to the mixer is on or off, and then the output of that mixer can be on the network as well, and you can subscribe to it. So Chris is talking about either changing the subscription, that the output of this mixer is constant, and Chris, maybe instead of changing subscriptions, maybe a macro is just turning inputs on or off, and the subscriptions are always there, but they're just turning different ones on or off. So what's coming out of that mixer is the control room or the automation directly. Now that could simplify it a bit. Of course, if you ever had to, take that mixer offline, then you've lost everything. Then you've got to go, subscribe to things at the node itself. So there can be complexity either way. But yeah, I can see how using something like a vMixer, a hidden mixer, could make that. It's kind of like blue boxes. We've replaced little blue boxes around the radio station with some stuff that's built into the AOIP systems that we have.
Right. But you have to think of it from the workflow standpoint. Now, as far as failure, yes, if you lose a vMix, right, of course, your outputs are gone. But then you're talking failure on the device itself. The mean time between failure on an Axia product is like 20 years. So, if you have a failure, it's going to either be somebody, doing something malicious with a... you'd be fine. So, I wouldn't panic in that respect. But I consider dedicated buses to get you where you want to go. This way you can come up with fault-tolerant approaches. You could do 2 sets of vMixes on another, profile somewhere else and just have it prepared for when necessary, and that could feed. But turning on the inputs, I did that for a place. That's how we did our mix minuses. I had routable mix minus because of that. That's how we did it. We had 4 studios that had to feed 6 destinations with mix minus, and every time the studio went live, that vMix set of buses were fed to the destinations that were mix minus. When they took that studio offline, switch to the next one, profiler would switch it over, and we'd just continue on our merry way. And then I had a touchpad, or what do you call that? Touch? Well, I could do touch, but it was a screen with square blocks and the IFBs for each of the destinations. So I could manually select the studio and put more IFBs up and running. And it was all through under the hood.
Well, one of the benefits of an AOIP system that I've been talking to people about for years is that you don't necessarily have to write down what every wire does. A lot of it is kind of self-documenting. If you can see both ends of an Ethernet cable, you kind of don't have to write down what it's doing. You can see it pretty easily. However, it's possible that we could have some systems that do get complex. Hey, before this signal gets on the air, it routes through here, it goes over the EAS system, it comes back in, it does this. And so documenting that might end up being kind of important to do, to document what the process is, even if you no longer have to document the individual wires.
Well, what you should consider, if you're doing a complex facility, I still am a fan of labeling the cables. So even if it's just you come up with a naming convention, numbering system, and then this way when you have a cable in a studio, you unplug it from a switch or a node or anywhere, you look at it and you know exactly what it's supposed to be, where it should be going. So you don't have to use alphanumerics. You could use a numbering system. You should definitely consider that, because at some point you're going to wind up with a rack full of Cat5, Cat6 cables, and you will not be able to figure out where it goes or what it did, and you happen to unplug it from your node in a rack with 6 other nodes or six other other devices like switches, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, which switch was this supposed to be in? Which VLAN was that part of? Oh no, I've got 6 stations and 4 switches, and we VLAN them to separate. Oh wow, now I don't know where I'm going. But if that Cat 5 had a label on it, you'd know right away. If it said 0627B5, you'd say, oh, Studio B, that's the 5th cable. I know what that is. That's a mix -5. Boom, done.
Sure, we're getting in the habit of labeling switches because we have people that need to look at it from time to time who don't know which switch is which. Oh, hey, go look at the Axia switch. I don't see an Axia switch. Oh, I mean the Cisco switch. Well, the Cisco label is really, really small, so I think I finally found which one it is. That kind of thing. And I try to set up to where all the different ports on the switch behave exactly the same way, so it doesn't matter which port you plug it into. But when you start into VLANs and you may be VLANing a given port, or you may break up a switch such that some ports are for one purpose and some ports are for another purpose, well, then you do have to start to label the switch as to what the ports do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, labeling in general is just good practice. You should do it. Even if you're doing a switch that all the ports are the same and everything's broadcast to all the ports, you still should label it so you know. Because there are going to come times, whether it be 2 o'clock in the morning or a Saturday afternoon, or the pressure is on because something has failed, and you're going to be in that rack or in that studio cabinet looking at this switch going, wow, I've got 16 things falling apart right now. I'm not even sure where I'm pulling wires from. Labeling will definitely help you through that troubleshooting. Think of it again. I always say this. If you're a lifeguard, there's certain procedures and protocols you follow when there's somebody asking for help in the water. Same thing is true here. Everything is all honky-dory, right? We're doing a great day. It's a Friday afternoon. We're out at the pub having a good time, and then suddenly around 8 p.m., all hell breaks loose. You want to be able to walk into that place and know exactly where things are, what's going on, and you can troubleshoot much faster, much easier, and your mind is at ease. That's and more complex systems you definitely do, but even the simple stuff. I've worked at stations that we had 2 switches, a couple of surfaces, and there were times when things went haywire because the IT guy unplugged stuff, but we had labels, and I was able to walk somebody through and go, "What's that wire doing?" I don't know. It's just hanging on the floor. Okay, it's on the floor. Is there a label or sticker on it that says numbers, letters, and anything else? Yeah. Read me what it is. They read it. I knew exactly where it had to go. Told them, okay, in the rack, look down halfway about chest high. Do you see 3 rectangular green devices that have lots of holes in them? Yes. Good. Look for the one labeled Studio B1. Yeah, I found it. Good.
Yeah.
Now plug that connector into any one of those little empty holes. Okay. Now, did the orange light come on? Yes. Good. Now go in the studio and see if your console's alive. Now,
there you go.
No, I didn't. I told the brand switch that I was talking about.
I'm sorry,
No,
your audio
Cisco
cut
switch.
out.
Look at that. It's the DAS again. Let's see if this works. So I described the switch to you. Do you know which brand that was? Manufacturer?
That's the part I didn't hear. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I was talking about the green rectangular panel with holes in it in the rack and about chest high. And did I mention which brand that was, or do you know which brand that would be? If I mentioned
no, but if it's green, I'm not. I don't know what brand is.
That
green?
would be the old Cisco switches.
Oh, older ones. Okay, I'm only familiar with the kind of.
But the example I'm trying to show is doesn't matter what's in the rack. If you've got an organized, labeled system where you can talk over the phone with somebody and walk them through the layman's terms. This is the basic. Expect the person you're going to be talking to at that emergency moment to not know anything about the technology in the facility. It's like a paramedic that gets a phone call for 911 for help. That person calling in for 911 is not a paramedic. That person is just the average person. That paramedic now has to figure out how to explain to them, is the person breathing? Can you see their eyes? Are they saying anything? Are they on their back? Is there blood coming out of their body? You understand? You see the line of thought and thinking? That's what you need to do.
Sure.
That's how you develop systems
a lot of us engineers seem to have very photographic memories for what does the rack look like, and okay, go to the 4th box down. Does it say TrendNet on it, or does it say Mosley on it? And okay, now on that Mosley thing, push the button that says PGM. Now what does it say? I've met so many engineers, and myself included, we seem to be able to recall just exactly what that looks like. It's also great to have a picture, an actual photograph, and I've needed that sometimes. I'll go pull out a photograph of a transmitter site and say, okay, Larry, look at the transmitter. It's the third meter over, because I forgot what it was in this case. Right. Hey, Chris, we've got to take a quick break, and we'll be back with a tip. Our show is brought to you, episode 303 of This Week in Radio Tech, brought to you by the folks at Axia. And I want to talk about Axia routing. Chris Tobin was just talking a bit about how convenient that can be, but I want to show you this absolutely gorgeous facility here. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. This is the Cumulus Nash facility. This is one of their control rooms. In fact, America's Morning Show is done every day, 5 days a week, from, I don't know, like 4 a.m. Central Time until 8 or 9 Central Time, is done from that room right there. And the producers are in that room. The talent is just through the glass in the beautiful television-style studio. You can go ahead and scroll down that picture if you possibly can. I'm not sure if you can there in the studio. Scroll down and see the other pictures in this article. But there's a split Axia console there. What else do we have here? This is, by the way, from Radio Mag. You can go look at this at Radio Mag online. There's a whole racks full of automation systems there. There's another studio. We're scrolling by. Oh, that's gorgeous. That's the Nash Nights studio. And one thing I wanted to point out about the routing here is that when the Nash, and there's the basketball court, it doesn't have an IP address. It's about the only thing in the building that doesn't have an IP address. But that's in Nashville. And when they added the Nash Nights studio about 9 months after the America's Morning Show studio was built, when they added that Nash Night studio, they built it all with Axia, Axia consoles, Element consoles, X nodes. They hooked it into the existing Axia system that was already in place, and honestly, it all hooked up with one Cat6 cable. One Cat6 cable, and that whole studio, the whole Nash Night studio, came alive with all the sources that they needed that were in the central rack area, and they could share sources with the America's Morning Show. The shows are actually done at different times, so they can, during the morning, one show can use a given codec, for example, or a phone line, and in the evening, actually they have a Telos VX system, so sharing phone lines is not a problem at all. And that was another thing. The Telos VX system, bam, came alive with literally one Cat6 cable. Now, I think they ran a second one just for safety in case, one of them ever dies. But it only took that one cable to hook everything together. And then it's just opening up screens on a browser and clicking to configure your sources and destinations and just make everything come alive and work. So just an amazing facility, and really shows off the power of networked audio and the ease of doing it with Axia. They added one more studio about a year later. It's an interview studio, so they don't do a live show from there, but they added another Axia console there, pretty big one, and then they added some phone lines for that room, another ISDN codec. It was a Zephyr Extreme, and so all these things just get added literally with one gigabit cable going back into the central wiring area. It would be a stretch to say it couldn't be easier, but I guess literally it could not be easier. I'm not saying it's easy. There's planning. There's IP addresses to figure out. There's a little bit of documentation to do to keep track of where stuff is. But my goodness, you could not have done this stuff in the time they did with ordinary, traditional wiring schemes. Not even with AES. AES just cuts your number of wires down by about half. This scheme, AOIP, cuts your number of wire feet down, I always tell people, by 90 or 95%. And it's got to be at least that. It's just amazing what you can do with audio over IP and routing. Let's take one more look at that beautiful first picture from that studio, the Nash Cumulus studio. Again, that's the bunch of dozens and dozens and dozens of affiliates. That's where Blair Garner and his cast of country stars does America's Morning Show every weekday morning. And it's just an amazing setup. All right. Axia, Livewire, AOIP, and now it's got AES67 built right in. So you can connect up to non-Axia devices, things that haven't gone with Livewire, but they do go with AES67. You can hook them right into that whole system. Thanks to Axia for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, Chris Tobin, relaxing in beautiful Central Park in New York City. I don't know how you can think of something technical while sitting there looking at the beautiful trees and the breeze going by, and just it's a great place. So what tech tip can you bring us?
Oh wow, tech tip for this week would be documentation. Time to sit down and keep track of what you're doing, because I can say I worked on a couple. I'll go the other way. I was working on a project last weekend with a friend of mine, an engineering project we'll talk about next week. It's utilizing phased array antenna systems. It's actually pretty cool. It's for TVENG stuff. Yeah, and working with the president of the company and looking over the stuff that we're doing and the installation. It did involve some climbing on a tower, and it was all about the documentation. We actually pulled out the paperwork. He had drawings, he had little hand sketches, and all as a result of that, we did a smooth install, one time, no broken cables. Everything went according to plan. So I'm going to say this time around, documentation. Find the best method you can use. Make sure, speaking of, we were talking about earlier with your pictures and stuff, one of the things I've always done is when I go on vacation or holiday, I make sure I have pictures of everything in a book for the guy who's covering for me so that he can walk somebody through, that is, a problem when he's not on site. So he's looking at the same thing they're looking at. So there you go. That goes right dovetails back into my documentation thinking.
What a great idea. And with smartphones, there's just no excuse for not taking pictures. And you know what? Now, a lot of you have iPhones. If you've got an Android phone and you got Google Photos, you can upload to your heart's desire automatically. You don't even have to do anything. You take the picture, and literally a few seconds later, at the worst, a couple of minutes later, it's stored on Google Photos. You can access it from absolutely anywhere, and it's just great. I love that auto documentation. Chris Tobin, thanks for joining us. I appreciate you making the effort, and hey, enjoy your rest of your evening there in Central Park.
Absolutely. The squirrels are running by. Oh, there goes a sparrow. So yeah, it's nature at its best in a man-made facility. It's great. I love it.
All right. Good deal. Thanks, Chris Tobin. Chris Tarr was here earlier, and we were glad to see the Geek Jedi back with us. Thanks so much to our sponsors and to Suncast for producing today's show. We appreciate him very much. And Andrew Zarian for making a quick cameo appearance earlier in the show and for founding the GFQ Network. Be sure you tell your friends about This Week in Radio Tech, the website, thisweekinradiotech.com. Or we're also on the GFQ Network, gfqnetwork.com, where you'll find lots of other incredible podcasts, some of which are even better than this one. Check it out. I'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.